I think someone had their hand up before you, unless someone was distracted.
I didn't raise my hand.
Okay.
I will.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
You speak of the job loss, and the fact is that when President Clinton signed NAFTA, I believe that that was basically the death knell for our country, and especially for our state. Because basically manufacturers, it was very easy for them just to go across the border and pay $2 a day as opposed to a living wage. As a senator, and if in fact you have a decent number of additional Republicans, will you possibly push to repeal NAFTA?
No. And let me tell you why. If you look at what's eviscerated manufacturing in California, it's all our fault in California. Let me explain why. First of all, let's look at your contention. There was some manufacturing jobs that went down to Mexico, but a lot of them have left. Some of them came back to America because the most productive workers in the world are in America. And what I think we need to do is free our workers to compete. And here's what we need to free them from. Did you know that California has a cost of doing business that's about 23% higher than the rest of the country? Here. I worked in the aerospace industry before I was elected. We just lost our last aerospace headquarters with Northrop Grumman moving to Washington, D.C. Now, why did we lose so many aerospace jobs? You know we have the second highest cost of energy in the country? Hawaii's higher. They're an island. They don't have any oil out there. So we have the second highest cost of energy. We have the greatest regulatory burden, the third highest tax burden. What do you expect? Business is going to leave. Now, if you want to see a place where there's a lot of manufacturing going on, Texas. What's in Texas? I'll tell you what isn't in Texas. No income tax. No income tax in Texas. Now, here's the challenge that we have. And I'm more concerned about China than I am about Mexico. Let me tell you why. In China, they have a kind of mercantilism. And the government there isn't really communist anymore, it's really fascist. And what the Chinese Communist Party are doing is they're manipulating their currency to maintain an advantage for their manufacturing. Now, I don't think this can go on forever. In fact, we see a lot of strains in the Chinese economy that may explode in social unrest here very soon. But the point with China is that China, just a couple of years ago, became the biggest manufacturer of global greenhouse gas emissions, bigger than us, because of their expanding industry. They actually bought more cars in China this last year than we did in America. Now, it would stand to reason, they're 4 times bigger than us. But here's I think, the challenge for us as a free market economy. I don't believe the Chinese are our friends. In fact, I'm very concerned about what's going on there, and I'm extremely skeptical of these individuals who say that America needs to pay higher taxes to reduce our global greenhouse gas emissions, while basically giving China a free pass. How does that make sense? Now, if you want to reindustrialize America, I think what we need to do is we need to lower some taxes. You know, we have the second highest business taxes in the country, or pardon me, in the world, in America. Japan's number 1, we're number 2. Hasn't been working out really well for Japan in recent years, has it? We need to get serious about producing more domestic energy. How many of you know that the bill last year that would have opened up the first new offshore oil lease off the coast of California that passed in the state Senate, only to be ignominiously expunged in the Assembly? Did you all know that was my bill? Yes, it's my bill. I've got another bill I'm working on now that will open up the coast to the 3-mile limit using slant drilling from existing platforms or from safe locations on shore to get at the more than 1 billion barrels of oil that we know about in the state waters off our coast. That's worth over $75 billion of oil right there. And if you include the federal waters off our coast, we have in excess of $1 trillion worth of oil off the coast of California. Why are we not extracting that oil? Why are we paying the Saudis for that oil? Why are we paying Hugo Chavez in Venezuela for that oil? When we pay people like that, what do? The dollars go out of the country, so they can't be used here to invest and to reindustrialize, to automate our manufacturing so we can compete with the Japanese and the Chinese and the Indians. And in some cases, some of that money finds its way into the hands of terrorists who want to kill us. Wouldn't it make more sense to extract our own oil and refine it and use it where we need it? We have a lot of natural gas in California as well, and there's enormous amounts of natural gas in the Rocky Mountain states and in Canada. They've found a lot more of it in recent years using new techniques that crack the rock to get it out. Now here's the challenge, sir. 80-32. We can use it, it's plentiful, but under California's global greenhouse gas emission law, we got to cut our emissions down. And natural gas has 60% of the emissions of coal. It's clean from a pollution standpoint, but the Democrats, Barbara Boxer specifically, because I know there's a few patriotic Democrats in this room, the liberals view carbon dioxide as a pollutant now. I was just, ma'am, you're giving me toxic gases right now. Don't get close to me, I'm a politician, I'll probably keel over anymore. Yes, sir, in the back.
What is your position on amnesty?
What is my position on amnesty? As you heard me mention earlier, Carly Fiorina supported it openly last year. I never have. Now let me talk about this in two parts, if I can. The first part, and this is something everyone, almost everyone can agree upon, everyone except the most ardent open borders activists. We need to complete the fence on our southern border. Do we not? There I said her name again, has been trying to have things both ways for many years. Did you know at the federal level there's a two-stage process to actually get a project approved? You have to authorize it, and then you appropriate it. So you can authorize a fence, and you can say, look, I voted for a fence. But what happens if you don't put any money against that fence? Does it get built? No. And so what Barbara Boxer has done over the years, especially depending on how the public opinion polls have been going, is she'll vote for the authorization, but she doesn't vote for the appropriation. So she can kind of have it both ways. Now, I think it is every nation-state's sovereign right to know and to control who comes into their borders, to know if they're a criminal or a business person or a terrorist, to know if they're smuggling people or drugs or other contraband. Don't you think that's the right of any nation state? Absolutely it is. Good. Now, here's where we get into trouble. Here's the next stage. What do you do with the people already here? Okay? Now, ma'am, you don't mind if I call you ma'am, of course. Here's the challenge with what you just said. Here's the challenge with what you just said. Get them out. What do you suppose the percentage of population is in California that agree with that statement?
I would say it's a bigger every day.
I would say it's about 30%. That's because you live in Lincoln. So now, if there's not the sentiment out there for the round them up in paddy wagons and kick them out, what can we do about this issue that allows us to speak with dignity and respect about people? Because we're talking about people, many of whom have children that, by current regulations, are U.S. citizens. So what can we do about this? Here's what I think we can do, is we have to appeal to Americans' innate sense of fairness. Fairness and rule of the law. How is it fair, we have to ask rhetorically, to somebody, let's say, waiting patiently in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, applying for a green card, and waiting for years to legally come to America to work? How is it fair for that person to essentially have other people who took the initiative to come into this country illegally, cut in front of the line, and then have everything forgiven and be getting citizenship in front of the line, in front of these individuals who have waited. What do you suppose, what signal does that send about America's respect for its own laws? And what signal does it send to that person who is waiting and trying to follow the rules? What do you suppose their friends in Tegucigalpa are going to say? That you're a schmuck? That you're a fool for thinking America would follow their own laws? Right? And so if you set it up like that, talking about fairness first,